you for joining me. I'm Paul Samarar, Brexit Impact Specialist here at Moore Kingston Smith. And I'm delighted that we have with us today my fellow partner, Rob Husband, and also joined by Andy Berry. And Rob is going to take us through the implications of Brexit on specifically a couple of issues relating to creative agencies, and those include marketing and ad agencies. So over to you, Rob.
Many thanks, Paul. Thanks for the intro. We're joined today by Andy Berry, who's the Managing Director of Global Logistics Management. And Andy's just going to take us through a couple of basic issues that are coming up and relevant issues at this moment in time for marketing services businesses. So Andy, many thanks for joining us today and sharing some insights with us on how Brexit might impact on our marketing services clients. Specifically, we'd like to just touch on those clients that are providing services within the marketing services sector, and the fact that they are used to working within the reverse charge area, and that's pretty familiar to everybody. What we'd like to have a discussion about is what happens for those transactions that are straddling the 31st of December Brexit implementation date. Perhaps you could take us through your thoughts on that area.
Thanks, Rob. Okay, so the 31st of December is the date that the transition period ends. What it means is that everything that moves across that border, one way or the other, back and forth, will require a customs entry. What it means for items that are in the UK that need to return to the EU, or items in the EU that need to return to the UK, you won't have the ability to complete a typical returns goods relief entry as you would normally do. So what that will mean is that you will need to create an audit to ensure that you can instruct your agent or logistics provider to be able to carry out that entry function. So we've been working carefully on trying to make sure, we've been speaking to customers to make sure that we get that right. There is no advice at this moment different to what they've been advising for the last few years. It still remains the same, but the guidelines would be such that you need to be able to prove the goods left the UK or left the EU for you to be able to return. So you won't have things like export entries or import entries because this doesn't apply at the moment. So you're going to have to find another way of doing so. So that's one of the major hurdles that will occur for those that have got items that at the moment that will straddle the 31st and the 1st of January. So the only other things that you need to be careful of is your lead times. On your lead times for any procurement, if it runs your pricing or what you've agreed, the pricing may not take into account any taxes that may be applicable. At this moment in time, we don't know if there's any taxes going to be applicable. Hopefully they'll sort that out in the next month. But if they're running behind on their lead times, then you're going to have a conversation about who's going to be paying for the duties. So, and you're definitely going to need to provide the export paperwork. What we've been advising to all of our clients is to make sure that they do that from the 1st of January, sorry, 1st of December, so that there's no doubt by the time they get to the 1st of January they're compliant. I would imagine everybody's got their EORI numbers sorted by now. I'm sure that everyone's, if you've dealt with international trade, you'll have an EORI number. If you've not dealt with international trade, the government went through a process of changing VAT numbers to EORI numbers, but you might want to check to make sure that is in fact the case for your own. Then you've got the international trade compliance packs that you would typically have for anything that's bouncing backwards and forwards across the globe. We use those, and they've been proven to to satisfy customs and revenue and customs. So we would look to make sure that we would suggest that people make sure that they've got international trade compliance packs for anything that's going to straddle that period. To answer your question, Rob, or do you need?
Yeah, that's really useful, Andy. Could we also just touch on how the new rules relating to ownership of product, particularly that controlled by our marketing services agencies on behalf of the brands, how that has changed more recently and what the implications are?
Well, as you know, the rules changed in 19, but the way in which, if you don't own the product, and the way it affects marketing agencies, the creative agencies, is that quite often they're charged with moving around somebody else's product. And as you know, you cannot claim import VAT on items that you don't own. So that will come into play. Whereas at the moment, you've probably been moving it backwards and forwards through Europe, no problems, no questions asked. Well, that will then come into play for anything that's going in and out of Europe. So you need to look at that closely, whether it's in the contract that, with your client, or whether they specifically, I think they probably need to speak to you guys about that element.
Okay, could you give us a specific example, Andy, of something that you might see as a typical situation for a marketing agency, perhaps with a promotional stand or something similar? Yeah,
some people they store their marketing stands and their display and exhibition stands. They've been storing, because it's been easy to do. We've been storing items around Europe. The trouble you're going to have is that obviously we're going to have a situation where once we get to the 1st of January, you're going to have a customs entry to bring any of those items back. All those goods at this moment in time that are in existence, they are in free circulation. The trouble we're going to have after that is we're going to have to prove that, and then if there's anything added to it, some of these kits are kits that evolve. So that they might be rebranded, they may have other items added to them. As they start to do things like that, elements of that kit are no longer in free circulation. So you'll need to take a decision on whether or not you want to maintain that status, or whether or not you want to, and which parts of it. So you're going to need to be moving that. How much of it needs to come back to the UK? In some instances, it doesn't need to come back to the UK at all, so it doesn't really matter. But you will find that if you do want to bring it back to the UK, you're going to have to demonstrate that it's in free circulation. And that goes back to the audits and the ITC, the International Trade Compliance Packs, to make sure you've got these things covered off. You don't want to be making false declarations around returned goods relief or declarations that are not accurate. So the penalties, the repercussions of a greater number of audits from customs on this particular issue probably will follow.
That's really useful as an example, Andy. Is there anything else that there is a big watch out for in the next few months in relation to the sector in the absence of the trade deal at this moment in time?
I think the only other thing we need to be careful of is, as we start to do our own trade deals, as of the 1st of January, we can start doing our own trade deals. So as the UK, when we start doing that, the country of origin of goods may at times conflict with the rules that are within the EU. So what I mean by that is that if the EU's got an agreement that it doesn't allow a certain nation's product into its market, or it's got quotas, then you won't be able to necessarily bring that product in via the UK. So if you buy something from, I don't know, this is just purely an example, say from South Africa, and we have an agreement with South Africa, but the EU doesn't, then it won't necessarily follow that we'll be able to move that product into, if it's manufactured in South Africa, whether we can move it into the EU. So you need to keep an eye on the country of origin Not immediately. I think it'd be fine initially because we're all aligned. But as time goes on, that will become less and less so. And so you just need to be mindful of it when you're making your decisions, particularly around marketing services that quite often procure materials on behalf of their clients, and then they take them off around different jurisdictions to give them away to display. You just need to be mindful of it. That's all.
Excellent. Many thanks, Andy. That sort of gives us a flavour of some of the issues that are coming up from our marketing services companies. It's not necessarily about services and reverse charge services. Those regimes will stay in place, but there are some difficulties coming. And as we all know, there are some fairly swingeing penalty regimes that come alongside those things. Paul, back to you.
Great. Thanks, Rob, and thank you, Andy. Some useful tips there and information there on what is a hugely complex area and changing, and no doubt if a free trade deal is agreed, there'll be yet more changes afoot. So thank you both. Just do check out our Brexit hub on our website, which has a lot of information, videos, webinars, and we'll be able to answer any questions you have via that hub. So thank you for joining us, and stay safe.